I had a myself how this develops, if it develops. But I had a thought like this. Purim time, everybody knows when we get drunk, if you damage something or you mazik somebody a little bit, there's leeway. There's a Trumas Hadeshin that the Ramah quotes la halacha. It says that if you mazik someone on Purim, since you did it in your drunkenness, people are meichel, or where the halacha is meichel, and really you're able to like get away with stuff. Now the question is, are you also able to get away with insulting people a little bit on Purim, or being a little disrespectful on Purim? Now the minig certainly is yes. The minig is to be disrespectful and to push the lines and Purim's one. And there's a lot of, I guess, Alpisvara, it shouldn't really be that different than being mazik someone. Just like you're not allowed to be mazik someone, but on Purim, a little bit of damage is tolerated. So to a little bit of blurring the lines in chutzpah and whatever can be tolerated on Purim too. And there are definitely some poskim who mention that. Now, others say that insulting someone or embarrassing someone or being disrespectful is so much more severe than just being mazik their moment, and therefore there's no leeway given for that. For example, I saw Ravadia in Chazon Ravadia in Purim. He says as follows. He says, "Mashi yesh noigim b'yeshivas lachrein." He says, "This minute that I saw in the early yeshivas of late, livchul and rav Purim, asher mashmiya b'morim koyel b'divrei litzanos v'hitul al rosh yeshivas, v'ramei yeshivas b'divrei b'karis v'bdichas hadas." He says they put someone up who mimics their yeshivas and embarrasses them, and I'm sure you know all about this, and gets carried away. He says, "Like to hate kazais b'Yisrael, he ain't shum heter b'davar." This is not acceptable. There's no heter b'davar. And there's no, you're making jokes from someone who makes jokes and the expense of the Yisrael or the Rebbeim or the Yeshivas, whatever is in the Yeshiva, is God loving in Yisrael. Shem Zalman similarly is brought on Halicha Shlema. Shem Zalman was extremely against this. Shem Zalman, as we well know, was a very mild-mannered person. He was a very, very, like a delicate flower a little bit. But when he heard that there was going to be a Purim spiel in Yeshiva in Kol he ran down there and he gave them a zah yelling because Talmidim said they never saw him get this upset. Meaning, so there are those who strongly say that no, there's no blurring the lines, there's no chutzpah that's allowed or whatever. And it just got me thinking, is there good chutzpah and bad chutzpah? Is chutzpah sometimes tolerated? Does it matter if the line is good? Like if it's a good line, then maybe you can get away with it. Like if it's just a shvacha chutzpah, then it's a problem. Like it got me thinking about this like paradigm a little bit. And I wanted to, I guess, open up that question a little bit. Now, I wanted to start with the obvious place that we need to start. Is if I count the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos in Parak, I believe it's Mishnah Chaf. The Mishnah says, Yehuda ben Tema Omer, Yehuda ben Tema says, Avi Az Kanemer v'Kal Kaneshe, Ratz Katzvi v'Giba Kari. These are all the tchunas that a person should have. Now, Az Kanemer means chutzpah, like some sort of, oh, how are you? Last is return of Shemashmayim. Hu Hayomer, he also used to say, Az Panim Legehenim, Ubayshis Panim Leganedin. So, the Mishnah that writes like the core curriculum, the core text on chutzpah, starts off saying, Havi Az Kanemer, that you need to have some sort of chutzpah. You have to have some sort of, azus in the person. But the same man Amr, Hu Hayomer, he used to say that as Panim the Gehenna. So obviously it's a tightrope, meaning Yehuda ben Tema himself, right away in the Mishnah, is laying this down. Now we know the Gemara in Beya and Daf Chafayim at Beis says Gimel Azin. There are three people that are three like groupings of mechutzafim, so to speak, of Azim, and one of them is Klal Yisrael. Yisrael is Azin Sheba Umis. Yisrael is the most. I don't know, Rambam. I don't know. There's no real tight word for chutzpah. Chutzpah is the best word. There's no way to touch chutzpah. Even Goyim say chutzpah. Chutzpah is the best word. But whatever chutzpah is, Yisrael is azin sheba umis. The Torah is referred to as oiz a little bit, and Hashem gave the Torah to Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael is the azin. They got the oiz. They need like oiz to tame the azas. So there's some sort of like balance. It's a maila. Klal Yisrael has it. It's not our chesaron. It's good for us probably. It probably helps us get where we're going. Mitacheni. There's like exactly. It's like this tightrope, this balance. Now, I'd rather, before I go into this discussion over here, there's a shtickle, I came across like a Chassidish Vartel. Two Ger Rebbe said this Vart. I think it's a beautiful Vart. In this Mishnah on Pirkei Avos, it says, Havi Kanemer, and then it says, Az Panim Legehenim. So they're trying to answer this question, what's this balance? What's the Azus that's needed? And each one of them in their own way says this Vart. I thought it was very nice. I just want to share it. The Beis Yisrael was once talking to someone. A guy was depressed. He fell into depression. He had done whatever, Averis, whatever. And he felt unworthy and not worthy of doing mitzvahs anymore. He wasn't worthy of being who he was supposed to be. So Yisrael took out a Gemara Shabbos, a Gemara in the Kofi Testament Beis, and he says, read me the Gemara. So the Chassidish Bacher took the Gemara and reads as follows. It says, Amar Rav Chiya bar Abba Rav Yechlan, Kol ha'ina amein yehesh mirab b'chol koichai. Anybody who answers amein yehesh mirab b'chol koichai with all his strength, afilu yesh by shemet shel avodah zarah meichlin. Even if he has some sort of shemet of avodah zarah, they're meichlin. So Yisrael stopped him and he said, Zagmer, what's the lekach for this Gemara? What's the Havana of this Gemara? What's supposed to be the takeaway of this Gemara? So the Bracha tells the Yisrael, the takeaway is that Amein Yesh Merabah is so powerful and so potent that no matter what, Amein Yesh Merabah has a way of cutting through it. Like it's Amein Yesh Merabah. He says, yeah, that's true. That's one lekach. But there's a second lekach taken this Gemara. The lekach for this Gemara is that even someone who has Hirura Avodah Zarah is able to say Amein Yesh Merabah B'chol Kaychad. It's a beautiful daher. It says that's Azas. That's the Havi Az Kanomer. Even someone who was Nichshul and Machshavas Avodah Zarah, that means that's the, he really went all the way. He could still say Amein Yesh Merabah B'chol Kaychad. It's not a reason to stop him. It's a beautiful daher. And I saw his brother, the Lev Simcha, said it in his own way, and just I thought it was a nice ma'amah. He said himself in his own way as follows. It says Yerushalmi in Peah in Parak Chesed. It says as follows: Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish were going to the bathhouse in Chamet Tveria, and while they were going, an ani stopped them, and he said, "Please give me. I need some food to eat. I need money. Please, please. It's desperate." And they said, "We're just going to the bathhouse, and when we come out, we'll give you the money." When they came out, they saw that he was dead, and so it says they looked at each other and said, "Oh, he died. Okay, we don't see anyone here who can take care of him. Let's bury him." And they started being Isaac in the Kura. And when they were doing the Tara on this person and they're moving his body around, a big pouch of money fell out of his clothing, and they saw that he was just like some sort of illness. He was a hoarder. He had plenty of money, and this wasn't about money. He was just trying to steal money by schnorring. He didn't need the money. And they said, Baruch Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved us. He wasn't machshel us. And this person that we didn't give, that we waited to give to, was really a Ramai. He was someone who didn't deserve the money. So the Lev Simcha says the same thing. He says, in this Yerushalmi, they went into the bathhouse, they ignored the guy's pleas, they come out, he's dead. The normal reaction of any person would be to fall into dikayon and just start crying. They need the tshuva, they're depressed, they're like, well, look what we did. And Taka, like the Gemara in Tainus talks about a similar story, right, with Machamish Gamzu, but meaning, and instead he says the reaction is, they say, there's a new mitzvah in front of us, we have to bury this guy. Let's get busy doing the next thing. Meaning they didn't fall and say, oh, we're done, we're out of the game, we messed up so badly, there's nothing we can do. They went right to the next mitzvah. And when they were doing the next mitzvah, they bumped into the fact that he was really not. In any case, this is both two brothers, two Gary rabbis, Lev Simcha and Yisrael, saying the same vart. And I have a Chassidish Sefer over here. There's probably 25 other Chassidish Zvarim that say this. It's one of the, I would say, the core underpinnings of Chassidish Hashkafa is that no Jew is too removed and that it's never too late. And that's probably a good Havana and have a Az Kanama, but balanced by Az Panam V'Gehenna. I'll just say one more interesting included before we go into like a little more of the Shiloh here. There's a story with the Chavetz Chaim. Chavetz Chaim, when he was very old, he lived in Radin. He was already very elderly. He had some Einekach, some sons-in-laws and some sons who were living in Radin. I think his grandchildren from his sons-in-law, but they were living in Radin with him. And the Chavetz Chaim didn't go out of the house anymore. He was a very old man. He would daven, at home. And Friday night they'd make a minyan in his house for him. And all the Einekach would come and say good Shabbos to the grandfather. And the Chavetz Chaim was sitting there, and one of the Einekach came by with her father. It was a little girl. And he says, Zag Shabbos to the Zayda. And she turns her face into her shoulder like a little girl, and he tells her, no, it's Zag Shabbos to your grandfather. And she just, melts over there. And then the Chavetz Chaim said, he quoted the line in the Mishnah that says, Baishis Panam Legan Eden. Chavetz Chaim said, Baishis Panam Legan Eden. Like being shy is it's a mila, it's a good mila. And then the next Einikol comes into the room, and it's a little boy, a precocious little boy, and he comes bounding in. He says, "Good Shabbos, Zayda," right at the gate. No prodding, no nothing. He's ready to roll. Chavetz Chaim mumbled under his breath, "Az panim." So everyone sitting around is like, if we're doing the Davi Fuchid's Mishnah, so saying like the Chavetz Chaim didn't finish it, "Az panim." The Chavetz Chaim stopped. He said, "No, I'll explain to you." He says, "There's not as panim is bad and not Baishis panim is good." Like we all understand that every midah, it's about how you use it, it's about how you deploy it. And I'm giving hadracha to the parents and how to be mechanech to these children. I'm not describing the children for the children's sake. When I say Baishis panim, I mean treat the child delicately. The child needs a certain type of chinuch in order to get through to them. As panim, this is a child with different potential, different capabilities. Treat this child differently because he needs a different way to access him. Like I'm giving advice to the sons-in-law on how to deal with the grandsons-in-law, whatever it is, to deal with their children. Some interesting story about the midas. Now, in any case, so this is the tightrope, the dichotomy in Azus. Now, I just want to share one more thing. It's an interesting story from the Brayis Mesachtas Kala. It's not such a famous story, so just once we're talking about Azus, the Brayis Mesachtas Kala brings the same mission of Az Panim Legehenim. It says as follows: Yehuda Az Panim Legehenim, Baishis Panim Leganeden. And the Gemara brings as follows: My time of Yehuda. Now the Kala Brayis Mesachtas Kala Rabasi is like a Gemara of sorts on these Mishnayos that don't really have Gemara. So it tells a story. It tells us a few makaris for this, and then it brings a story. It says, Pamachas. One time, the Zakanim was sitting. Avru lefneim shnei tinoikes. Two children passed by in front of them. Echad gilas roisha, echad kisas roisha. Now, in other places, in other midrashim where this is brought down, it sounds like they were sitting at the foot of the Harabayas, like at the foot of the Beis HaMikdash. And one was going with an uncovered head, and one was going with a covered head. Zesha gilas roisha. So Rabbi Eliezer, when he passed by, said mamzer. He passed judgment on him. He said, he's a mechutzif, he's a mamzer. Rabbi Shua says, ben anida. He's a ben anida. Meaning each one of them, because of the chutzpah that the kid passed by the chacham, not wearing a yarmulke, like he was not, cowed by the chacham, each one of the chacham passed judgment on him. Rabbi Kiva says, mamzer ben anida. He's a mamzer and a ben anida. Amrulai, so these are Rabbi Kiva's two rebbeim, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Rabbi Kiva's rebbeim, they're much more senior to him. Amrulai Akiva, eich malach haliba lavar al divrei chaverach, Rabbi Secha. It doesn't, I don't know if they told him or the others sitting around, they told him, said, Rabbi Kiva, you're great, but how did you make a taste to argue on what your rebbeim is saying and say this other chat? I'll back it up. I'll bring receipts. I wrote this, I'll bring receipts. He went to the mother of this tinuk. He found her selling grains in the shuk. It's a very interesting promise. A Rebbe should promise. But Kiva says, if you tell me what I want to know from you, I'll grant you Elam Haba. So Rabbi Kiva nishba b'svasav, Rabbi Kiva was making a shvu with his mouth, but he was, he wasn't planning on keeping it. Amalei bin Chazeh Mativik. This son that I bumped into of yours, what's his provenance? What's his origin? Amalei Chishnachnasti l'chuppah nida hayisi u'pirush menu baili u'baleni shishbini v'avarti hazeh nimtza isatin g'mamzer benin. She says, when I got married, I was in nida. My husband separated from me. The groomsman, the best man, instead was mizana with me. So it turns out this child that I have over here is a mamzer ben anida. He's both. He wins a prize. So nimtza isninik mamzer ben anida. Amru gadol hayr Akiva shehichesh es Rabbi Yosef Baruch shegila seidu Akiva ben Yosef. The Chazal or whoever was around said Baruch that Hashem was megala his seid to Akiva ben Yosef. Akiva was so perceptive over here. He was able to figure this out. Now, the Gemara ends up continuing, tells them the interesting, rather there are some sources that say, and it's mashalik the Samajashim, that this child was Yeshu. This child is now that's just because to not put a nice bow on it. It's, whatever. There is versions, I wouldn't say it's Midrashim, but it's things written, a long time ago, I don't know, 1,000, maybe even longer, that tie these Midrashim together with that legend. What do you say? Timeline Be'erach fits, yeah. These are Tanoim who lived at the same time of him. Milas Harabayas is how other stories of him are described. Say in the New Testament, say in the literature, whatever it could be. Make it what you want, take it or leave it. In any case, I just share this brisa, which is an interesting brisa, a fascinating brisa on its own. Even if it's not Yeshu, it's a fascinating brisa to show how convinced of this idea that Azos is such a terrible characteristic and such a terrible feature that it automatically ascribes like a certain very, very bad nature to the person. Like it gives you everything you need to know about the person. When they saw the child who was behaving disrespectfully, and that's why the Bryce is brought over here, they understood right away something is severely wrong with him. Now, what's interesting is because of this, not directly because of this Bryce, but in a similar vein, of Tzaddik Hakin's nature, so to speak, by his mamzerish nature, his azistic nature, to know that he's a mamzer, could be used the halach. And now he brings a raya from Gemara Basra that talks about Rabbana had a shaila where a father had 10 children, and when he died, the mother said, I have 10 sons. I shouldn't say the father. There was a family with 10 children. When the father died, the mother said, I have 10 sons and only one of them is his. That's what the lady said. And the shaila was now, so the children came to the Torah in front of Rabbana. They wanted to know who should be Yerush, the money of this man. Meaning they all claim to be fathers. Who should be Yerush, the money? So what do you say?
It's the only question I had.
Yeah, exactly. So Rabbana, so Rabbana told them, why don't you go and bang on his kever until he tells you who's who. Go bang on his kever. Go bang on his kever until he tells you who's who. 9 of them were running off to bang on his kever. One of them stayed behind. The B'nai said, he's the one who's the real son, and the rest of them are of all sorts of stray children who don't belong here. So Tzaddik brings a raya from there that you see that the nature, like the chutzpah nature of these children versus the one who wasn't a mechutzif, was consequential enough to be able to ascertain who the actual child is and who's not the actual child. Now, it's not a halacha ma'aseh shaila. It's just, again, I'm just...
nature. If he didn't want to hit his father...
Yeah, also, the Rishonim say that it was Shuda D'Daina. it was really, he was just paskening up his hashara, and this is the way he made the hashara. It was like more of like a Shlomo Melech test of like to see the, whatever it is. He brings the rightness from something to see. So it's just interesting to see how Vita takes. There's a whole discussion, rather, this I mamish don't want to get into, but there's a whole discussion about doing shidduchim with Bali Tshuva, with children from Bali Tshuva. There are some that are against it because there's Gemara in Nedarim that talks about Bnei Tasmidas, and since they were born from a relationship where their mother was a Nida, they have bad nature. Moshe has a tshuva about it in Yeridei and Chelik Dalet, I think. But Moshe says something interesting. Moshe says that the main criteria, so to speak, of a mamzer, of Bnei Tasmidas is bad midas, right? That's what you'll see. And if you see that they're fine children, and they grew up nicely, and they're being read to shidduch, presumably if they're being read, they're fine children, that l'chayr is the biggest raya that you have nothing to worry about. But rather the Stipler and Reb Menashe Klein put out a whole sefer called Kilas Yisrael, I think it's called Kilas Yisrael, of his discussions with Reb Menashe, with the Stipler about this question. A whole arichistic back and forth. It's just another discussion of how seriously to take these tchunas, but not what we're going into. Now, what I really wanted to handle is, and this is similar to what we opened with, is we're saying that, chutzpah is this fine line, right? Meaning, havayaz, kanamer, klai yisrael, azin shabu umis. You need some sort of azis to get where you're going, right? That's important. Mitzat sheni, it's very detrimental to be an azpanim. And we're seeing that it's like almost like definitive of your characteristics, right? Meaning a person who's an aspanim is mamish, it's easy to tell how bad he is. So is there good lines and bad lines? Meaning, are there certain things that are objectionable and certain things that are not objectionable? So that's what I want to talk about. So there's a lot of times in the Gemara brings sukkim. Now, most of the time the Gemara brings a pasuk for a drasha, right? The Gemara is shooting straight. It's bringing a pasuk that tells us a certain outcome, ladina, something we're supposed to know. And the Gemara is bringing it, straightforward. But there are times in the Gemara when the Gemara brings sukkim, and it's like a play on words. Now, play on words is already somewhat of like a misuse of the words, right? Meaning, it's somewhat of a disrespect a little bit to quote the words of the pasuk, out of order or masuris or using it in the wrong context. And even so, you find in the Gemara many times that the Gemara does these types of uses of words. Now, there's two particular shilas in the Paiskim that I wanted to bring up that handle the value of a good line. Like in the Gemara, you see that if it's a good line, if it's used for the right reason, you're able to do it even though it's like using the pasuk wrong. So there's two chuvas that I want to share with you. There's a chuvah follows in the Torah Lishma and some Rishon Beis from the Ben Ish Chai. He has a shaila as follows. There was a story of three chachamim, and they were sitting and learning a sefer from a certain Reb Zev. He doesn't say what the sefer is or who they were, but they were sitting and they were learning a sefer from a person of the name of Zev. Three chachamim together. They were arguing back and forth about the svaras that it says in the sefer. And then at that time, a real wolf walked in or passed by right in front of the house. And two of them went out to look at it. And the third one stayed sitting and learning. And the two of them went out to look at it. They called him and they said, no, come look. There's a wolf out here. There's a Zev out here. And he says, is it, it's the Reb Zev from the sefer? Otherwise, I have nothing to say to him. That was his line. And they said, well, chutzpah, to make fun of the Reb Zev of the sefer and call him like the Zev of the walking outside. How can you talk like that? And they went to the Ben Ish Chai with the Shaila. That sounds like they were a little defensive that he wasn't coming to look. A lot of these two Shailas to see, it's a lot of defensiveness going on in the Shailas. But they came to Ben Ish Chai and they asked him the question, and the Ben Ish Chai told them, and my computer's not working now, I can't pull up the tshuva. He basically tells them that a good line is not chutzpah. That's basically the long and short of what he says. It's like, meaning, this is a play on words. It was a good line. A good line is not chutzpah. A good line is tasteful. What do you say?
That's the whole brisk is.
Yeah, the whole brisk is very much on this ideology. A good line is tasteful. A good line could be sharp. It can sometimes be slightly abrasive. But it's tasteful because it has humor. It's clever. It highlights a point. A good line is not chutzpah. Now, where he's coming from is a tshuva from the Marit. It's a famous tshuva, but it's worth sharing. The tshuva of the Marit is as follows. The shaila is like this. It's al oidis ruven shekara tager al mamone akila shenasnu kami yichidim svardim lekila kadesh Romania sheyichtem bekragish lam pinkas hamelach. Meaning there was two kehilas, one was of Sephardic origin, one wasn't, and they included people who shouldn't be included into the tax roll. Meaning basically the kehila brought in people who shouldn't be included into the tax roll to diffuse their chiyuv. So they got into an argument about this, and the people who didn't want to be included told them that, look, what you're doing over here is in violation of the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Ves bnei Yehuda machatim lebnei Yevanim, laman archikim me'al gvulam." Now, this is a pasuk in Yael in Parak Daled. It's a nevu over there, and it says, "Bnei Yehuda, you gave the bnei Yehuda to the bnei Yevanim." Now, these people who included them, and it's again very defensive in nature, said, "You're calling us, you're calling us that we gave you to the Yevanim. You're making a play on words on the pasuk. How can you make a play on words on the pasuk? It seems like a certain. It's defensive. It's like a righteous indignation about the play on the words on pasuk, when really it's a money fight. It's a money fight that's going on. But they came and they said, how can you make such a play on words on pasuk? It's disrespectful. So the Marit, who's one of the mamash iconic, Yesh Mishur Rishon Shuvas Farm, the Marit in Chelik Beis in Yeridea has a tshuva about this, and he brings a raya from Gemara in Gittin and the Zayin that Yevanim could refer to the location where you come from. It doesn't mean you're being called someone Yevani, and that playing a good line from a pasuk is fine. And what he brings to back this up is a very interesting story. He brings a fascinating story. He says, "Va'amru al harav Maria Buav." He brings a story about Ritzlik Abuav. Ritzlik Abuav is from the Dar before him. He says they say a story where Ritzlik Abuav as follows: "Shahaisa einay achas smuya." We know this from this Jew. He says Ritzlik Abuav was blind in one eye. Okay, I know this is this is a story. Melech Portugal, the king of Portugal, used to say about Ritzlik Abuav, "Shnei einayim yesh le b'malchus she'eina b'chalayim erach lem." Ein nesher Portugal ve'eina shel Rabbi. Said there's two eyes that are worth everything. One is the eye of the eagle. I guess the symbol of the Portuguese flag at that time, the Portuguese Empire, was an eye, and the eye of Ritzlik Abuav, the one eye of Ritzlik Abuav. What he could see with that eye is the best. The advice he gives me. Says one time, Pamachas hayamahalach b'derech b'sada. They were going on a trip in the field. Yashav le'arav al shein sela echad, and the Rebbe Ritzlik Abuav sat on a big slab of stone. V'shnei nechadim yashvu echad miyamin ve'echad mismoil. And two of his enichel who were walking with him sat, one on the right side and one on the left side. And there was a bachar, one of his talmidim, was standing in front of them. He was in a good mood. I don't know anything about Ritzlik Abuav's temperament, and I don't think it matters, but he says he was freilich, he was in a good mood, he was approachable. They were talking leicht, they were schmoozing. Say something, give me rishus that I should sit. Amalei Shev, sit down. So Yashav al Evan, he sat down on the stone. The Talmud of Amar, he quoted a pasuk, Al Evan ha'achas shivei einayim. On one stone, 7 eyes. Because if you count it up, there's 2 Einiklach, 1 Talmud, and the Ritzlik Abuav. So 2, 4, 6, 7. There's 7 eyes sitting on the stone. This is the line that the Talmud said. Now it's somewhat of a disrespectful line. But it's kishmadik. It's somewhat of a disrespectful line. So the Talmud was quoting. It's a pasuk in Zechariah that says, Kinei Evan achas nesat l'fnei Yeshua al Evan ha'achas shivei einayim. So the Talmud was darshaning this to mean, these people sitting there. So the Maria Abuav looked at him, and he had enough from this line. And he said, "Tahani li tzachuse." The fact that it's funny benefits you. Meaning, this is chayrable material. This is not how you should be talking to your Rebbe, but tahani li tzachuse. The fact that this is funny is very beneficial to you. That's what Maria Abuav said to him. So from here, the Marit brings a raya that if it's a good line, if it's a funny line, if there's some humor and charm in it, then it's not chutzpah. Or then it's tolerable chutzpah. And similarly, the Ben Ish Chai that we quoted before is saying the same thing. So this doesn't do anything to resolve our question of the tightrope of desirable and adequate chutzpah and the negative type of chutzpah. That's really I'm just highlighting the nekuda of this thing. But in these chuvas, you see like a similar, so to speak, like I don't know, dichotomy of sorts of like allowing for good chutzpah. Now, what's interesting is that Bakanta story from Kveger. There's different versions of it. Some say it's about the Shakisari, some say it's about Kveger. In either case, the story is the story. A lot of people said it over. Shach used to say it over. But there was 2 Talmidim who came to get smicha from either Kveger or the Shakisari, and he gave them a bechina, and they did very well in the bechina. And when they were done the bechina, he looked around his house. It was sparse. There was no money, and there was no food really. And he found a little bit of wine and some hard-boiled eggs. That's what he found to eat. And he brought them. They became like a chambramfen. He bought some hard-boiled eggs and some wine. He put them down on the table, and I guess as the cherry on top of the smicha b'chen, he says, which one do you make a bracha on first? So one of them said, it's a Mefurish pasuk. Mefurish pasuk, what do you mean? It says, the pasuk says, v'sa'ai mikedem. The egg goes first. Now, that's not what the pasuk means. V'sa'ai mikedem. V'sa'ai mikedem means in the direction of kedem. V'sa'ai mikedem, and whoever it is, the Shakisari Kvega looked up and he said, Latzanas? No smicha. And he pulled back the smicha. So, but mitzad sheni, there's many witty stories of Aizul Charif.
It wasn't a good line.
So either it wasn't a good line. It's a very decent line though, but either it wasn't a good line, Taka. Like this is not a good enough line. Right? Yeah, exactly. It's like a Rebbe joke. He didn't like it. This wasn't Zimzach. Or, and I saw a Svardish sefer that tries to say this. I don't really buy it, but I saw a Svardish sefer that tries to say that it's a machlekes between the Ashkenazim and the Svardim. The Svardim have good humor. and they allow jokes and chutzpah if it's in clever taste. Ashkenazim are stuffy and too serious, and there's nothing that's okay. Latzanos is latzanos. What do you say?
Ashkenazim is the story.
It goes together. To prove this, he brings a raya from a story of the Meril Diskin. Well, Diskin was once sitting in Yerushalayim, he was saying shir, and he heard two women yelling at each other like crazy outside, fighting over there in the court. And he sent the Talmud down, go see what's going on, see if he could see what to figure out was there. And he said, he came back and he said, he made a play on the pasuk, Gam b'nai slavcha doivres, or tzayikes, Gam b'nai slavcha tzayikes. Like the b'nai slavcha are screaming outside. And Meril Diskin said, using a pasuk to make jokes about some trivial fight that's going over there, and he couldn't come to himself until the Talmud was makabel to makabel nazifa, like some sort of chayrim of sorts, like makabel nazifa. So he brings these stories to show that the Litvisha, in the Litta, they took this stuff extremely, extremely seriously. There was no tolerance for jokes. L'maisi, he brings, I give him credit for this, even though it's a Svardim Mechaber, he brings that the Chavetz Chaim had a very witty way of talking, and he brings once the Chavetz Chaim was sitting at a meeting with Rabbanim, and he was asking someone to go speak about something, and he told him, Lech Reid. Now, Reid in Yiddish means speak, but Lech Reid is a pasuk. Hashem, right? Lech Reid, Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, is Lech Reid. Go speak. So you see the Chavetz Chaim made plays on Sukkim now. Maybe that was a good joke, this is a bad joke. I don't know. He brings the story of Chaim Moiser. Chaim Moiser made a joke. They even asked Chaim Kanievsky to try to straighten out these conflicting stories. It wasn't, perhaps it's a machlekes between the Ashkenazim and the Sfardim. Perhaps it's not. Perhaps it's just about what's a good line, what's not a good line. I'm not here to settle this question. I think the Welt holds that I'm Purim for sure, and even during the year, if there's some charm and humor in the chutzpah, you could usually get away with it. Humorless chutzpah is really what gets you in trouble.
Just to circle back to the Gemara Bava Basra that we mentioned earlier with Rabbanah for a second. So we mentioned this Gemara with Rabbanah, the Gemara Bava Basra that talks about the 9 children and the 10 children who from amongst them was the authentic Gerish. Now what makes that interesting is that Reb Tzaddik in a sefer called Rasisei Leila, which is a sefer of dreams that he had at night. Reb Tzaddik recorded throughout his lifetime. He writes in the Akdam to the sefer that since he's a young man, he would have dreams related to the sugyas or the inyanim that he was in the middle of, and he tried to record them so that they wouldn't be forgotten completely. So in this kuntras, it's a small kuntras called Rasisei Leila, he records all of these dreams, and in Eis Chaf Aleph, he records the Shaila as follows, and that's really what sets the table for that Gemara Bava Basra. He records the Shaila as follows. The Gemara in Yivamis on the Flamet Hay has a whole nidin of a case as follows. Really, Me'ikar Adin, the halacha is that a Yivama who falls li'ibam is not allowed to get married until she waits 3 months of Havchana, because we have to see if she's pregnant or not. Now, let's say, and the Gemara talks about a case like this, where a woman did not wait those 3 months, she gets married, and then it becomes revealed that she is pregnant. So now, the child that's born, and from this pregnancy a child is born 7 months later, and the Gemara has a shayla if it's ben tishel l'rishon or ben shevel l'sheni. Is it a child who had a regular 9-month gestation period and was born, from the first husband, in which case she does not belong to be married to the second husband because it's Eishes Ach Shalei B'Makom Mitzvah, or is it a child that was born to the second husband, then everything's fine, the Yibam was correct. Now, Hayos, this is unresolvable, we don't know. Really, she's not allowed to stay married to this man, but the Gemara talks about a case where she did, and she keeps having children. So the Gemara says from there on, the second child, and I guess conversely, the third, fourth, etc., are Safek Mamzerim, because we don't know if this was an illicit marriage, or she ever supposed to be married to the second husband. We're not sure about that. Now, the Gemara has many sveikis in regards to the dinim of the Safek of this child who's born, and we're not sure of his yichus. And a lot of them have to do with Yerusha, and the Gemara brings 6 or 7 complex cases of various Yerusha disputes that could arise from the case of Safek. Now, Reb Tzaddik and Rasisei Leila, and this was his machshava that he had while he was sleeping, was what about if this child shows tremendous chutzpah diketchunas? This child who we're unsure if he's a mamzer or not, shows himself to be a very disrespectful child. He has mamzerish tchunas, he's not respectful, and etc. He says, would that be enough to conclude that this child is obviously a mamzer, and the older brother was really, from a different marriage, and this marriage is illicit, it never should have happened, and would that resolve the questions? Now, to this end, Reb Tzaddik brings a few different creative points in Aris, and he's the one who presents this Gemara Bava Basra with Rabbanah, and says, l'chayr, from this Gemara Bava Basra, you see that you can bring such a din halacha. Now, of course, he's aware of the Machlekes Rishonim, how to learn the Gemara, etc. But that's like the background, the I guess colorful background information of this tushtal of the Gemara Bava Basra to using the tchunis of a mamzer to actually describe and figure out who he is. Now, in any case, Just wanted to compete l'shem hashlamas inyan, just be mashlam inyan. Okay.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.